Hello everyone, this is going to be a video where I'm going to kind of zero in on this will be Jonestown, Jim Jones, kind of part two, and I'm going to zero in on Congressman Leo Ryan, who kind of cracked the case for us all. At least that's how it looks. I'm going to tell you that the Jonestown nationally presented story was probably discussed years in advance in a conference room that did not contain Leo Ryan. In other words, Leo Ryan is just a crisis actor, along with Jackie Spear, who I believe was wounded at the airstrip, which is 6 miles away from the so-called Jonestown encampment. But I think people have a vague idea of that Leo Ryan was a congressman of the Democratic Party, and he represented the 11th Congressional District from California, the California 11th Congressional District. He did so from 1973 until his death. We're putting down his death as November 18th, 1978. That's when he was shot to death by an M16 rifle, which is, of course, clandestine services hardware. And I believe he was killed by a paramilitary soldier, or soldiers, plural. Could have been more than one shooter, right? What I want you to know, people, is that the guards at Jonestown did not wear uniforms, and it didn't look like the county jail, where you have the good guys are on one side of the window and the bad guys are on the other side of the window, right? And that the county sheriff does wear uniforms, in case you didn't know. The county sheriff in county jails, they wear uniforms. The prisoners wear prison inmate issued clothing, which is pretty standardized. It's either orange or it's blue. It's rather drab. It's rather depressing. So in the county jail, people are dressed according to uniforms. Now, that said, does not mean that everything is as you say, because a sheriff's deputy can put on prison clothes and pretend to be an inmate. Or you can have an actual inmate who's incarcerated because he was either convicted of a crime that requires less than 1 year in incarceration, or he's awaiting his arraignment or trial. All right? And typically that means plea agreement. He has not signed a plea agreement because very few cases ever go to trial. In case you didn't know that, it's about 1%, maybe 2%. State of California is probably less than 1%, state of California. And what I want to tell you is that there's snitches in the county jail. There's snitches in the state prison. There's snitches in federal prison. That is, someone who was incarcerated perhaps for some crime that they may or may not have committed. They may or may not be convicted, but they are approached by someone who promises them special consideration or financial inducement, or perhaps help to their family, or gives them credits to their meal account, because there are meal accounts. If you didn't know, there's concierge credits, concierge credit, where you can buy Dorito potato chips. You have no idea all the inducement possibilities. When you live in a concrete closet with no windows, man, a bag of Doritos potato chips, you'll sing like a canary for something like that. Anyway, you should know that there's snitches that are infiltrated in the county jail, in the state prisons, in the federal prisons. And why would you think that would be different for a United States congressman or senator? They're infiltrated too, right? And in the case of Leo Joseph Ryan Jr., who was born on May 5th, 1925, he was indoctrinated from childhood into the CIA. Now, the reason that I am pretty confident about that is if you look at what schools he went to and the fact that there's no information about his parents, what they did for a living, it's kind of similar to the William Colby story. William Colby, who I think we all agree, he was about as high as you could get in the CIA, in charge of working with Operation Gladio, working with the Vatican Holy See in Rome, working with the Bank of Vatican, working with the Cords program in Vietnam, working with Operation Phoenix, political assassination, torture, and kidnapping programs in Vietnam, and then having his son be a key witness at the O.J. Simpson trial. Carl Colby testified at the preliminary hearing for O.J. Simpson and at the murder trial for O.J. Simpson. That's right, William Colby's son. Now, he had 5 children. One died early. One died mysteriously around the time that William Colby was testifying for Watergate hearings and the Church Commission. Around that time, William Colby's eldest daughter died. So if you study these things, you'll see that happens a lot. It's just not Sharon Tate's father, Colonel Paul Tate of the Army Intelligence. It's not just Abigail Folger, whose parents are Peter Folger, who's involved with the importation of coffee beans, and whatever else is on the container shipment, right? Like maybe drugs, right? Maybe, right? And he sold that to Procter & Gamble, right? Procter & Gamble, maybe they're involved with the importation of whatever's on the container, right? Get a special sticker so you don't have to go through customs, right? It's not just Enos Mejia who had a daughter bayoneted 28 times to death and Peter Folger who had a daughter murdered. It's not just Colonel Paul Tate and Doris Tate who's involved up to her eyebrows with clandestine services. Doris Tate, crisis actor. She knows full well that Charlie Watson did not murder her daughter. She definitely knows that. Okay, and the thing is that you see kids get whacked a lot, and it might have happened with William Colby. But anyway, here's kind of the red flags that you see with the Leo Ryan. He was born in Lincoln, Nebraska, like I said, in May 5th, 1925. Lincoln, Nebraska. I know a little bit about Lincoln, Nebraska. During his early life, his family moved frequently, and let me just explain. This is the same story of William Colby. His family traveled through Illinois, which of course is a different state than Nebraska. Illinois is where Al Capone is. It's where Jack Ruby's from. It's where Jose Menendez started his career. Florida, it's where Ron DeSantis is, right? Florida. It's where Santos Tropicante is, Florida. That's where the Kennedys have a big compound and the Bushes have an island in Florida. It's where George DeMornshale was murdered in Florida, Palm Beach, Florida. Then they went to New York State, the Empire State, right? Empire State. Wisconsin, Massachusetts. Leo Ryan graduated from Campion Jesuit High School in Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin in 1943. Now, 1943, we had World War II going on. So what happens next, right? He's graduated from high school, so you'd think he'd go into the military. But no, that's not what happened. Leo Ryan was recruited to go into V-12 Navy college training, which is designed as a supplement to supplement the force of commissioned officers in the United States Navy during World War II between July 1st, 1943 and June 30th, 1946, which was at the conclusion of World War II. There were 125,000 participants enrolled in 131 colleges and universities in what is called V-12 Navy training. I don't know what that means, but it sounds like kind of intelligence training, ONI. They didn't use the acronym ONI, Office of Navy Intelligence, which is what Ron DeSantis did. That's what John Fitzgerald Kennedy did. He did ONI. Ron DeSantis did prisoner dilemma game training, whereas John Kennedy did PT-109 reconnaissance surveillance training in the South Pacific. That's what a PT boat is, a wooden boat. They're not there to attack destroyers. They're there to surveil, take notes, and note shipping activity of the enemy. All right, then after the V-12 training, Leo Ryan attended Bates College, which is a liberal arts private university in Lewiston, Maine. It's anchored by the historic quad. The campus of Bates totals 813 acres. It has also a small urban campus which includes 33 Victorian houses, some of which are consigned as dormitories. It has a 600-acre natural preserve. I don't know much about that, but it sounds like that's an indoctrination facility, or potentially, for clandestine warriors. After he was finished with Bates College, he then enrolled in the United States Navy, of course. Now that he's had V-12 training and Bates College training, he goes into the U.S. Navy, which is the maritime service for the United States Armed Forces. And then he's assigned to submarine duty. Okay? That's all about compartmentalization, submarine duty. Leo Ryan. So he's pretty well trained in compartmentalization and I think Navy intelligence. Anyway, he then, after 1946, Leo Ryan returns to Nebraska and he graduates from Creighton University, which is a private Jesuit research university. I always wonder what the Jesuits are researching. Jesus? St. Ignatius de Loyola? What's the research project? I thought we already established that the Jesuits are the soldiers of Jesus, right? They go with colonialism. The Jesuits and colonialism go hand in hand, which, by the way, so does your private bankers. Wherever the Jesuits go, a private banker is right there. And that's Leo Ryan's background, which parallels Paul Pelosi's background. He did Jesuit training at Georgetown University in the swamp. Anyway, Leo Ryan then becomes a teacher, high school teacher, and an administrator, and he's assigned to South San Francisco, where he becomes a city council member from 1956 to 1962. Now listen, people, with all that Jesuit background and private school training, I find it more than suspicious that he's assigned to South San Francisco, which is a huge CIA complex if you didn't know. So they sent him to, you could say the same about Long Beach, Manhattan, New York, parts of Yonkers. You can say that about Miami. You can say that about Chicago. But since I am very familiar with San Francisco, I'm just here to tell you now, with my lifetime experience in this zip code, that I don't see becoming a high school teacher and then right away becoming a city council member as normal. I don't consider that normal at all. When you're coming from Lincoln, Nebraska, really? Okay. I find that suspicious. That's like Harvey Milk rolling into San Francisco from New York after he served in the Navy and got himself in trouble for being gay and got in trouble in San Diego, California, sent back to New York, having to see a psychiatrist. Then he comes to San Francisco, and again he runs for city council of San Francisco. That is exactly what they did with Leo Ryan. It's the same program as Harvey Milk. It's similar. He teaches English at the Cappuccino High School. And he chaperoned the marching band in 1961 from Cappuccino High School. He chaperones on a special trip to Washington, D.C., the swamp, to participate in President John F. Kennedy's inaugural parade. Does that sound like a CIA ritual or what? Leo Ryan takes his high school marching band from South San Francisco to go see John Kennedy take the oath of office. John Kennedy, who 3 years later gets his head blown off. Leo Ryan was inspired by Kennedy's call to service in his inaugural address, and he decided to run for higher office. No, he didn't. The CIA told him you're going to run for congressperson. House of Representative. It wasn't a straight line. First, Leo Ryan was elected to be the mayor of South San Francisco. In case you don't know, let me just explain. That's a cemetery part of San Francisco. It's where they bury all the dead from all the wars. In Colma, San Bruno, it's all parts of South San Francisco. They're all clustered together. That's where Genentech is. You know, the when your company has its corporate address on DNA Avenue, I think that's suspicious. That's where Fibrogen is, where some of my clients used to work. Don't ask me about Fibrogen. They're right there where Genentech was. And those are clandestine controlled companies in this zip code, in the zip code for Leo Ryan. The Genentech story comes, later after Leo Ryan is murdered. But it's his zip code. And he's the mayor. I used to talk to Quentin Kopp because I had a client right there. I spent a lot of time in this zip code, all right? And I used to talk with Quentin Kopp, who was also on the board of supervised with Dianne Feinstein. And he had an office adjacent to my client. So I ran into him all the time in the hallways. And I talked to him quite a bit. Quentin Kopp. Check it out. He could have been Leo Ryan. Anyway, so what I want to tell you is Leo Ryan served as a delegate for the Democratic National Convention in 1964 and again in 1968, when, of course, they lost the election to Richard Milhouse Nixon, who was Republican. Anyway, he held his state assembly seat until 1972, when he then was elected into the United States House of Representatives in 1972. He was reelected 3 times. I don't know if those elections were rigged or not. California has a long tradition of being a Democratic state once Ronald Reagan moved on to greener pastures, right? Because Ronald Reagan was the last Republican governor. Well, it's not quite true. I think Pete Wilson might have been, and I think maybe George Deukmejian was. He was from Long Beach, CIA Long Beach. Anyway, what I'm trying to tell you is typically the senators and Congress people from California are Democrat. This is kind of like a standard default position. U.S. Congressman and former California State Senator Jackie Spear was assigned to Leo Ryan, and she, of course, eventually took his position. Leo Ryan was involved in a lot of what I would call clandestine service activities long before Jonestown. He used a so-called synonym to get himself arrested and detained and strip searched to investigate the conditions of California prisons. Now, this is kind of a poppycock story because you don't go directly to California State Prison without being sentenced to a felony of at least 2 years minimum. So I don't think Leo Ryan was, arraigned and convicted of such a thing. But he gained access to Folsom State Prison. And there is no way that could happen without CIA approval. No way. Again, you have to do bank robbery, or you have to do assault or armed robbery or murder or grand theft auto and be convicted for 2 or more years. Because if you have a sentence that's less than 2 years, you're going to be serving half, and you could do that at the county jail. Okay? So the county jail is for people who get convicted of 2 years or less sentences. As a California Assemblyman, Leo Ryan chaired the legislative subcommittee hearings and presided over hearings involving Tom Lantos, his eventual successor in the House. He went through significant educational policies. You should know that once he became a United States congressperson, he went to Newfoundland to look at the baby seals being killed, the killing of the seals. So somebody had to pay for that, right? Now, that's a tearjerker. I don't like to see baby seals getting killed either. Anyway, so Leo Ryan went up to Newfoundland. Someone paid for that trip. And then he said he vocalized that there's a lack of congressional oversight of the Central Intelligence Agency. Really? You think? Do you think Leo Ryan was the first person to come to that conclusion? So he's a limited hangout, because you don't normally trash talk the CIA unless they tell you to trash talk them. It's part of the controlled duality of MK Ultra. You always have to be wary of your heroes. That's what Ron DeSantis is, right? He sings the music. He sings the songs I like to hear. But do I trust him? No, I don't. But he does, read the script that I like. It doesn't mean I'm buying in, right? Like Richard Gage and the architects and engineer. He talks about that there's some alternative explanation of how the buildings collapsed, which I agree. I believe there's an alternative to fires and bombs. But that's where it ends with me, because I've never heard Richard Gage ever go anywhere close to a plausible explanation of how those buildings collapsed. So I think he just wasted everyone's time for 20 years, which I don't respect. I don't respect that. And I have personal interaction with him, which leads me to believe he is a paid creep who knows a lot more than he's leading on to. So he's a cover-up artist. And I think Leo Ryan is a cover-up artist. Anyway, he's going to go take the mantle that he's anti-CIA when most of his activities are paid by the CIA. Ryan once told Dick Cheney, remember the Yale dropout, Dick Cheney, that leaking a state secret was an appropriate way for a member of Congress to block an ill-conceived operation. He supported Patricia Hearst along with Senator Hayakawa and delivered Patricia Hearst's application for a presidential commutation with Jimmy Carter, which, by the way, Patricia Hearst was pardoned. I think she served 14 months in incarceration. Patricia Hearst, who went to the same school that Abigail Folger went to. Patricia Hearst, who went to a high school, a pre-high school academy at Crystal Springs, where Sam Bankman-Fried went to. Sam Bankman-Fried went to the same school that Patricia Hearst went to, which is about a mile away from where Charles Ng, a serial killer of 25 missing people, he went to the Notre Dame Academy, which is walking distance from where Patricia Hearst and Sam Bankman-Fried went to school, a serial killer who lived on the People's Temple Greenfield Ranch property in Mendocino. He went to school near Patricia Hearst and Sam Bankman-Fried. Do you think that's a coincidence? This is, by the way, in the zip code that Leo Ryan was a congressman. That's where he was a congressman. That's South San Francisco. Yeah, it's next to Hillsborough, which is next to Menlo Park, Atherton, which is next to Stanford. Are you catching on here? Are you catching on to my story? There are these hotspots, these CIA high concentration private banking areas where they recruit people like Patricia Hearst. You wouldn't expect the granddaughter of William Randolph Hearst, who brought you the Spanish-American War in 1898. You wouldn't expect his granddaughter to be kidnapped by Emily and Bill Harris, who attended University of Indiana on the Purdue campus, where Jim Jones graduated. Well, actually, Jim Jones graduated from Butler University, but he attended at least 3 years at Indiana University with his wife, where Neil Armstrong went, where Gus Grisham went, Purdue. Same campus. I don't think that's a coincidence that Bill and Emily Harris are then transported out to Berkeley, to UC Berkeley, and then meet Donald DeFreeze, and then they hatch a plan to kidnap the granddaughter of William Randolph Hearst, who's most famous for those words, "You provide the photos, I'll provide the war," with respect to the USS Maine sinking in the Havana, Cuba harbor on February 15th, 1898. William Randolph Hearst brought you the Spanish-American War false flag attack, which did kill 262 Navy seamen, kind of in the way that Pearl Harbor did, kind of in the way that the World Trade Center killed thousands of people. Yeah. See, people are sacrificed left and right. People are sacrificed. I don't think that the people that are running our world care about people. They don't care about the people that got killed at 9/11. They don't care about Patricia Hearst. I don't think she volunteered to be a kidnap crisis actor. You know, she never did graduate from Berkeley. She attended it for a while till she got kidnapped in the same neighborhood that Charlie Manson and Mary Bruner lived. Right. Is that a coincidence? No. It's near People's Park. It's near People's Park off of Dwight Way and College Avenue. I've been to all the restaurants and bars on Dwight Way, and I know that area intimately, okay? I know College Avenue intimately. All right, let me tell you that I can go on and on here, but I wanted you to know that Leo Ryan traveled with Jackie Spear and a group of 9 people from the press. And you know that the press is infiltrated by the clandestine services. Only 5 people were shot to death at the airport. Leo Ryan and 4 others. 3 of the 4 others were newspaper people. One was a cameraman who held a film which allegedly was released. But you know, all the tape audio recordings that we've all heard about Jim Jones telling the people to drink the Kool-Aid, telling to give the flavor aid to their children, those are all CIA approved, right? Who knows if they're true or real? Nothing has been released. No photographs, no real evidence. The crime scene was destroyed. World Trade Center, crime scene was destroyed. There's no investigation of the World Trade Center by anyone. No one investigated the World Trade Center destruction. Nobody. There was a fake investigation. Nobody conducted a real investigation of Jonestown. Nobody. And the reason why is that Jonestown, just like World Trade Center, just like the Pentagon, are CIA operations. And we don't investigate CIA operations. What do? We destroy the scene of the crime. Always. Always. And we whack or murder witnesses that don't seal their lips. Anyway, so I think that Leo Ryan was played kind of like a violin, kind of like Jack Ruby got played, like David Ferrie got played, like Lee Oswald got played, kind of like Charlie Manson got played, Charlie Miles Maddox. I don't think they informed Charlie Manson that he was going to be a scapegoat. And I don't think they told Leo Ryan, by the way, we're going to murder you at the airport. There were 29 people to get into 2 airplanes at that airport. And only 5 of them were murdered. 5. Now, there were 9 others that were seriously injured but didn't die. And then there was another 9 people that were modestly injured. So that's 18 people who were fragged with bullets. They could have died, but what I'm telling you, that only 5 actually died. And you can bet that nobody is talking. Now, Jackie Spear has gone on the record to say that there was no mass suicide at Jonestown. Now, she wasn't really present at the time of the killings, but I do think that Jackie Spear would have more information on the situation than I do. And I certainly agree with Jackie Spear that there was a mass murder, not a suicide. Not a suicide. And it would have been supervised by the clandestine services who controlled that airport and controlled where the flavor aid was. They controlled the pharmacy, they controlled the people, and they maintained the weapon stock. There are no cult members allowed to carry weapons. And there's no cult members. It's a prison camp. You could say that People's Temple was a cult, just like in the same way you could say that the Sacred Heart Order and the convent is a cult, which it absolutely is, because they take an oath of poverty and they give up all their money. So they can't escape. You can't escape as a Catholic nun or a priest unless you have family members that will let you live in their house. You can't escape. In the same way that the People's Temple congregation, they couldn't escape either. They were all peasants. So you could say that's a cult if you're willing to agree that the Catholic Church with their nuns and their priests, that's a cult also. Absolutely, that's a cult. So I agree that People's Temple is a cult. I don't agree that Jonestown's a cult. Jonestown was a research human facility for testing and researching humans and testing them. Prisoner dilemma game. If you don't believe me, we should ask Ron DeSantis, because I'll bet he has more information on Jonestown than I do. All right, that's kind of my talk right now. I'm going to sign off. I can go on and on about Leo Ryan, but I just want to tell you that his trip was financed and paid for and had to be CIA approved, State Department approved, in the same way that Jonestown's creation couldn't be approved without the State Department approving it, British intelligence, CIA, Union Carbide. Everybody's got to agree. You know, there's 25,000 acres of land. We're going to designate, 3,800 acre facilities for certain places. One's going to be called Jonestown. It's going to be at least 100 kilometers away from the town of Georgetown, so that if anything goes wrong, I don't know nothing about it, right? And that's what they've done. They just blame everything on Jim Jones. He's a wackadoodle crazy guy who was hanging out with the mayor of San Francisco, Joe Alioto, the mayor of San Francisco, George Moscone, Dianne Feinstein, who's on the Board of Supervisors, City Council, Willie Brown, the sugar daddy for Camilla Harris, is a friend, a personal friend, a very close personal friend to Jim Jones. And he's up there inviting Charlie Manson to spend time in Philo and Ukiah with him, and perhaps travel to the Greenfield Ranch 65 miles further north in the Redwood Valley. I'm here to tell you they're all in clandestine operations. All of them. The political tools, the private bankers, the kids that are recruited in community college, the young people coming out of Princeton, Harvard, MIT, Cornell, Columbia University, Stanford University, University of California, Davis, University of California, Berkeley, University of California, San Francisco, University of California, Santa Cruz. You don't hear about much. That was the #1 serial killing location for several years in the 70s. You know, after the Charlie Manson murders, we had a rash of serial killings occurring in the zip code where Dr. Victor Ocha's family was massacred in close proximity to the University of California, Santa Cruz, and close to Fort Ord, where Clint Eastwood was assigned during his military duty. Clint Eastwood in Monterey, Fort Ord. It's across the street from Abigail Folger and Patricia Hearst's academy. It's where they had the Monterey Pop Festival. It's next door to Fort Ord. Yeah, and the Linguistics Center, Department of Defense Language Warfare Center, and United States Navy Postgraduate School. It's all there. Does that sound like clandestine? And if you go down Highway 1, Pacific Coast Highway, you'll come to the Himalaya Society, where Mae Brussel was indoctrinated. And then if you go 10 miles south of there, you're at the Esalen Institute, which is just below Army Base Fort Hunter Liggett, which is on William Randolph Hearst's land trust. That's right. You remember Patricia Hearst got kidnapped and her granddaddy was brought you the Spanish-American War and owned the San Francisco Examiner, where the Zodiac mailed his letters to Patricia Hearst's family newspaper? Do you see what I'm talking about here? It's a close-knit secret society of operators, and they recruit in scapegoats that may or may not be used as necessary. They sheep dip everybody, and then they say, he did it, so that it conceals who really did it. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Bye-bye.